"I know what you are thinking," said Tinker. "Why am I not talking?" he said in a way of explanation. Charlie nodded, feeling a flush of nerves. "I'm in love," said Tinker, with a grand wave of his hand. Charlie had heard of people being in love, but he wasn't sure what it meant, and his brow crumpled like a concertina. Tinker laughed, and he knew that he had some explaining to do. "You know when you get that lovely sweet feeling when you eat your favorite ice cream, and it makes you happy?" he explained patiently. "Well, this is like that," he said with a huge grin. "But 100 times more sweet and lovely," he added. His eyes were shining, and he had never looked or appeared so happy, thought Charlie in wonder. It was amusing and amazing, but it was also frightening him. He didn't want to lose Tinker's friendship. Tinker was all he had, and Charlie was finding all of the silences difficult to cope with, and he could feel himself drifting away, and before he knew it, he was back in his costume, and he was shooting his webbing at everything in sight. A rabbit gave him a quizzical look, and then it scarpered narrowly away, avoiding being mummified in spiders' webs. Let's try and turn this page. 42, 41, put that over there, the next page. Charlie looked up at the tallest trees, and he thought about shooting a beam of webbing. An aeroplane passed overhead, and it disturbed his daydreaming. Charlie looked up, and he saw that they were near the end of the woods, and he could see the chimney tops in the distance, and he knew that he was nearly home. Spider-Man had disappeared, and Charlie was back walking once again in uncomfortable silence. They got to the crossroads, and it was time to go their separate ways. And Charlie looked into Tinker's eyes, and it was as if he was under some mysterious spell. Finally, Tinker spoke up. "I may be busy tomorrow," he said. "I have to see Anna and tell her how I feel," he said earnestly. Charlie was puzzled, and he felt deflated as Tinker patted him on the shoulder, and he walked off into the distance like a mirage. That evening, Charlie was quieter than usual, and it didn't take his mum long to begin asking questions. Charlie didn't want to say anything, but he finally relented as all of the questions wore him down. "Don't worry," his mum said as she temporarily put down a heavy book. "I'm sure he will come round. He's just discovered girls, that's all," she said, and Charlie lifted up the comic to cover his reddening face. He was feeling hot and flustered, but he didn't know why. Girls were one subject which he never thought about. He was too busy with his head in the comics to regard them as important. His eyes flicked rapidly over the comic as usual, but his mind was somewhere else, and it was hard for him to concentrate. He was worried that Tinker, his only friend, was losing interest in him. The last thing Charlie wanted was to be bullied again, and he knew that he could only hide behind his trusty comics for so long. That night it was hard for him to sleep, and the rain was pounding against the window as if it wanted to break in. Charlie stared at the angry grey clouds, and then they turned into the face of the man in the woods, Bob. Charlie pulled the covers further up to his chin, as if they would offer him some protection. He was shivering with cold and fear, and he wished that Spider-Man was here to give him a helping hand. Charlie reached over to turn his bedside light, and he fumbled with the switch. The wardrobe door creaked open slowly, and Charlie stared as the shape of the man in the woods appeared before him. Charlie's eyes were as big as dinner plates. How could he be here, thought Charlie, as he stared at the hideous form facing him. He tried to be rational, but he couldn't deny what his eyes were showing him. Finally, he found the switch, and his bedroom was flooded with bright light. The figure had disappeared, and all that was there was an old dusty duffel coat swinging on its hanger. Relief flooded Charlie like a tsunami, and slowly his breathing went back to normal. What a day, he thought, as he felt the beads of sweat dripping off his forehead. It's time for a distraction, he thought to himself, and he reached under his bed and he flashed out a comic from his ever-growing pile. Charlie fell asleep with the comic on his lap. Sorry. Next page, viewers, wherever you are. Charlie woke early and he was relieved to see the morning light. After his frightening evening, he could hear his mum snoring in bed, and he was glad that he had his own room. It was a thought which made him feel guilty. He made himself cereal and he ate it slowly as he struggled to wake up properly. He could hear the sound of the birds outside and the faint bark of a dog in the distance. Charlie was surprised at the sound of the cereal. To him it sounded like the crackle of gunfire or the pop of burning logs. It was only the humor of the situation which prevented him from falling asleep head first into the cereal bowl. The sound of the running shower brought him back to earth, and he shouted a quick goodbye to his mum, and then he stepped outside. As soon as he did, he almost wished that he hadn't. The wind and the rain blew into his face, and it turned his recently combed hair into a bird's nest. He walked up the street with his head down. This is not a good start to the day, he thought, and he managed to get to the lamp post, where Tinker always stood as regular as a favourite alarm clock. And Charlie was surprised to see that there was no one there. He waited for about 15 minutes as all of the school kids filed past, and he did his best not to look miserable or that he was waiting for someone. Hello, viewers. The rain was beginning to sneak into his socks and his feet were getting cold. He sneezed for the last time and he decided to walk to the corner shop to warm up, and so that he could attempt to get dry and gather his thoughts. At least they have magazines there, he thought, and he began to cheer up. All of that changed when he saw Tinker in the corner of the shop, but he wasn't alone. He was with his new girlfriend, and they were kissing. Hello, viewers. Charlie didn't know what to do, as a barrage of uncomfortable emotions engulfed him. So he decided to buy some sweets, as he felt silly just standing there, and he wasn't sure if Tinker could see him, as Tinker was obviously preoccupied with kissing and cuddling his new girlfriend. Charlie wanted him to notice him, and to at least say hi. He was hurting inside, and the last thing he wanted to do was cry in public. Finally, they pried each other apart like barnacles, and Tinker looked over at Charlie and he winked. Charlie shuffled his feet and he pretended to read the comics which were in front of him. He didn't know what to do or say. "Oh, there's your friend," said Anne. "What's he doing here?" she said a little too loudly. Tinker looked over and Charlie thought that he saw a flash of irritation on his face. "Oh, he's just looking at silly comics," he said almost disdainfully. Anna stifled a cruel smile from behind her hand, and before Tinker could glance over again, Charlie had disappeared with the sound of the chiming door. Tinker couldn't believe it. Tinker didn't mean to hurt Charlie, couldn't believe it. Tinker didn't mean to hurt Charlie. He was just so preoccupied with his girlfriend and she with him that they were oblivious to the hurt they were causing, like a lorry driver with a rabbit as he checked his mirror. Tinker quickened his steps as he walked from the shop, and he couldn't get away quick enough. The tears on his cheeks were being covered by the rain, but the pain inside him couldn't be vanquished. He had no idea where he was going, so he just kept on walking. Postman and milkman passed him by, smiling and happy with their lot, but Charlie hardly noticed them. All that he could think about was Tinker and the way that he had hurt him. Charlie didn't know how to make friends, and he wasn't sure if he wanted to, and like Spider-Man, he was a loner and a master of his destiny. He thought dramatically and he managed a small smile. The quickly greying clouds and the grim-looking sky matched his mood perfectly. Hello, viewers. Charlie was so preoccupied that he didn't hear the ever-quickening footsteps behind him, and he didn't see the shadow that was ready to engulf him. He had no idea where he was going, and he just knew that he couldn't be still. He was a ball of nervous energy. Charlie didn't notice that he was in an alleyway with high brick walls around him, and he was trapped, and he didn't know it. The sound of a bottle skidding across the cobbles made him stop and turn around. The youth that faced him had a baseball cap pulled low so that it was difficult to make out his features. Charlie felt that he was frozen to the spot. He didn't know what to do. The youth got closer and Charlie backed away, but he felt trapped as his duffel coat scraped against the walls. "Give us your money," the youth demanded in a raised voice, shocking Charlie. The youth put his hands in Charlie's pockets, but all he could feel when he was rummaging around was a few rusty coins and old bubble gum. Charlie didn't think that the angry-looking youth would be too pleased with his bounty. Charlie's hands began to shake in his pockets as he wondered what the youth was going to do next. Inevitable thoughts of Spider-Man came back into his mind, but it was of no use. He was trapped and he could see no way out. Now the youth's runny nose was inches from Charlie's face. Charlie gulped. He felt that he was doomed, and he waited for the first punch or the first unpleasant kick to land. Pain was something which he couldn't abide, however small. He closed his eyes and he waited for the moment of impact, but he didn't feel anything. He just heard a scream, and luckily it wasn't from him. It was from his assailant. Slowly he opened his eyes to see Bob, of all people, with the criminal in an armlock, and he was struggling, as if he were in the arms of a ferocious, angry grizzly bear. Hope you enjoyed that, viewers. Thank you. Good night.